3 spine-chilling, true security guard tales. Sinister secrets revealed from haunted night shifts. Mike had only been a security guard in Oakridge for a few months, but the community center's looming presence weighed heavily on his chest from the start. The peeling paint and broken windows seemed to breathe a haunted sigh as he made his rounds, echoing laughter from a happier time barely audible in the air. It was a dead town stranded in isolation, the kind of place where dreams came to die. And here he was, a 32-year-old man trying desperately to keep his daughter, Lily, in his life despite the growing distance between them. The nights dragged on, each one blending into the last, filled with the monotonous chore of checking doors and listening to the creaking whispers of the building. But something changed on that particular night. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously, a warning in their stuttered hum. His phone buzzed, snapping him from his stupor. He picked it up, but the voice on the other end was frantic. "Leave before it's too late." Panic twisted in Mike's gut, but with a roll of his eyes, he dismissed it as a prank. Then the footsteps started. Soft at first, like a child's shuffle, echoing in the empty hallways. They left a chill racing down his spine, yet he hesitated to investigate. After all, what was a single shadow in a desolate building? The air thickened with an unshakable heaviness. Was it his imagination? Or the siren call of sleep-worn fatigue? Nights dragged into uneasy silence, yet that call replayed in his mind. Weeks passed, and the incidents escalated. Cold drafts blew through abandoned rooms, sending shivers down his spine. Shifting shadows flickered just out of sight, taunting him as he leaned into their darkness. A reflection in a broken mirror caught his eye one evening, a man, pale and thin, with hollow eyes watching him. Mike recoiled, heart racing. Was this a manifestation of his fears, or something else lurking within the community center? Then another call came. "They're watching you, you need to know the truth." The voice trembled, urgent but shrouded in madness. Something squeezed the air from his lungs. Truth? He didn't want to hear it. So he brushed it off, convincing himself that whatever ghosts haunted the community center were not his concern. But the unease gnawed at him, compounding with every night shift. One night, as he made his way to the damp basement, his heartbeat quickened. It was now or never, driven by fear and curiosity. He found decrepit shelves hidden behind rotting wood old photographs. Smiling families, once the pride of Oakridge, their faces twisted into grotesque grins under the weight of horror. Each snapshot felt like a poisoned gift, sowing seeds of dread deep within his mind. And then they appeared, shadowy figures flitting at the corners of his vision, whispers weaving themselves into the fabric of his thoughts. Mike felt trapped, immersed in a suffocating reality he could no longer escape. The walls seemed to close in, memories unraveling like a frayed string. The longer he stayed, the deeper he sank into the unsettling truth that lay beneath Oakridge's surface, dark secrets woven into the town's foundation. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Suddenly, he sensed a presence behind him. It was now or never. Heart pounding, he turned slowly, only to be met with a pair of dark, cavernous eyes staring from the doorway, void of light, filled with malice. He was no longer just a guard. He was a fragile thread caught in a tapestry of ancient horrors that demanded to remain hidden. Every fiber of his being screamed to flee, yet the weight of the shadows compelled him to step forward. What awaited him in that suffocating darkness? The sickening twist of fate left Mike's breath hitching. Would he confront the sinister legacy of Oakridge, or would he end up the next face trapped in a haunted photograph? The figure in the doorway stepped forward, swallowed by the shadows, but something about it felt less like a person and more like a manifestation of pure fear. Mike's instincts screamed for him to run, yet he found himself rooted to the spot, eyes wide, heart hammering in his chest. Those hollow eyes held an invitation, a pull deeper than fear itself. Who are you?" he stammered, voice barely a whisper, emboldened only by desperation. The specter didn't reply. Instead, it moved closer, revealing a gaunt face that seemed to flicker like an old movie reel. One moment its features were clear, the next, they morphed into a grotesque mask of sorrow and rage. Mike's breath came in ragged bursts. "Leave," the figure croaked, its voice echoing his earlier phone call, laden with despair. "You don't belong here." The chill gripped Mike tighter, gnawing at his resolve. Dread pooled in his stomach. Why? Why are you here?" He managed to ask, fingers trembling at his side. It raised a skeletal hand, pointing towards the darkness of the hall beyond. The very air shifted, thickening with unspoken promises of revelations and threats. As if in response, a gust of wind burst from the hallway, sending icy fingers through Mike's clothes. The noises he had grown accustomed to, the creaking floorboards, the echoes of distant laughter amplified, warping into a cacophony of whispers. "Find them," the figure hissed, "or they will find you. All of you trapped with that." It melted back into the shadows, leaving behind an echoing silence suffused with a tangible terror. Mike stumbled back, heart racing as he fought to make sense of what just transpired. He glanced at the broken mirror still hanging crookedly on the wall, half expecting to see the figure there again, but it was only his reflection looking wide-eyed and terrified. He needed answers, needed to dig deeper into the history of this place. Those photographs weren't just relics. They were remnants of something dark, something that leached away happiness and hope. Clarity washed over him. Were these the families that once thrived here? Were they the very souls trapped by some twisted fate? His heart raced with renewed determination. He couldn't turn back now. Ignoring the dread pooling in his gut, Mike headed back toward the basement, drawn to the shelves that had revealed those images of frozen smiles twisted into grimaces. The more he uncovered, the more he could protect the ones he loved. There were secrets to be laid bare. If he didn't uncover them, what chance did Lily have? Descending the creaking wooden steps, he resolved to find out why those cheerfully once posed families now haunted the community center's halls. Every step deeper into the basement was like a step closer to madness. Each photo he examined made his heart pound harder, as if they, too, were alive and spitting warnings. But then, behind him, he heard its soft sobbing, laced with bitterness and dread. It wasn't just a figment of his imagination. It came from somewhere else in the basement, a sound that twisted the knife of apprehension deeper into his heart. He turned, heavy dread settling over him like a thick fog. "Is someone there?" he called, his voice trembling. The response was silence, but in that silence, he felt the weight of eyes on him. What if he wasn't alone in this basement? "Find them," the echo of that jarred voice returned, sharper now. Mike gripped the edge of a shelf, aware that every choice carried weight and that he was running out of time. What lay ahead in the suffocating darkness? Would he uncover the truth that could save him, or had he already sealed his fate? The answer lay just out of reach, hidden in the choking blackness that yawned before him. He took a deep breath, holding it tight in his lungs, steeling himself to confront the unseen. Would he uncover the horrifying reality of the community center, or be ensnared by its dark secrets forever? Mike barely had a moment to gather his thoughts before a soft, anguished wail echoed around him. It slithered through the air with a haunting familiarity. The sobs were delicate yet insistent, wrapping around him like icy tendrils. Where was it coming from? He squinted into the shadows that cloaked the far corners of the basement. Darkness blanketed everything. He could feel it pressing on his skin, urging him to turn back. Instead, he found himself stepping cautiously toward the source of that sound. "Hello? Is someone there?" His voice felt thin, like it might shatter in the stillness. The sobbing ceased abruptly, replaced by a chilling silence. Mike's heart raced, each beat echoing loudly in his ears. He took another step forward, his feet shifting over the dust-laden floor as he tried to pierce the gloom. Nothing. The basement felt alive around him, walls creaking as if sharing whispers of forgotten horrors. He was unmoored in time, suspended in this liminal space where past and present collided. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye, a shadow darting from one shelf to another. Mike's breath caught in his throat. "Who's there?" he shouted, more forcefully this time. His voice resonated against the cold concrete, penetrating the eerie quiet. Before he could respond, a figure materialized from the shadows. It was a girl, no older than 10, her face streaked with dirt and tears, wide eyes staring at him with a blend of fear and pleading. She wore a dress that seemed a generation out of style, fraying at the edges. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Caught off guard, Mike instinctively took a step back. His mind screamed for him to run, but her desolate gaze anchored him. "What would happen to you?" The girl hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if something loomed behind her. You can't let them find you," she swallowed hard, her expression shifting from vulnerability to sheer terror. "Just like us, trapped," she said, her words lingering in the chilly air like a death sentence. A sudden, bone-rattling crash echoed from the far side of the room, followed by a low groan that vibrated through the walls. Mike's heart surged as he turned, the fear ebbing through him, an unrelenting tide. What was that? The girl looked over her shoulder again, her body taut with dread. "You have to leave. Now." Her voice grew frantic. Before he could process her warning, the basement plunged into utter darkness. The feeble light from above extinguished like a candle snuffed out by a storm. Panic gripped him, and he fumbled blindly, trying to find anything to hold on to. "Where are you?" he shouted into the void, desperately scanning the pitch black for any signs of movement. Dread slithered down his spine as a low, guttural sound emanated from the depths of the shadows. It twisted and writhed, making his skin prickle, a harbinger of malice edging closer. "Mike." The girl's voice cut through the dark, sharp and full of urgency. It was closer now, powerful, almost suffocating. "You can't stay. You have to." The growl grew louder, more visceral. Mike forced his legs to move, propelled by instinct as he sprinted toward the stairs. His pulse thundered in his ears as the darkness chased him, an unseen predator lurking just out of reach. Lightning-fast thoughts collided in his mind. The girl needed help. Something sinister was stirring outside the light, and Lily was waiting for him. He barely reached the top of the stairs when a blinding flash erupted in the basement, a split second of light revealing the faces of the trapped, twisted, and tormented, eyes wide, mouths screaming silently. Mike's breath caught. Then the light snapped off, plunging him back into impenetrable darkness. Panic surged like a tidal wave, compelling him to run. He barreled headfirst into the hall, the urge to escape surging with each desperate stride. But what had he unleashed? What had he seen? Racing toward the exit, the whispers returned, relentless and taunting. They slipped through the crack in his mind, gnawing at his sanity. He could barely breathe, the unseen horrors lying in wait for him. Would he reach the safety of the outside world, or had he awakened something that would ultimately consume him? Just as he pushed through the door, holding on to hope, he felt a cold hand grip his ankle, pulling him down into the consuming void. What awaited him there? Was it salvation or damnation? The grip was icy, almost paralyzing. Mike blinked, his thoughts spiraling into panic as he felt himself being pulled backward. He flailed his limbs, scrambling to pull free, his heart thrumming wildly. The darkness seemed to warp around him, the basement's air thick with suffocating dread. "Help," he gasped, but his voice echoed weakly in the stillness. There was no response, only a low, mocking chuckle that seemed to echo from every corner. Against the cold floor, he kicked hard, finally ripping himself loose from that ghastly hold. He scrambled away on all fours, breathless, tasting the grit of the basement dust. Adrenaline surged through him, igniting his limbs. He pushed himself back to his feet, eyes wild, no light, no escape. Just Vincent's rusted toolbox near the corner, offering a faint glint of hope. He turned to the staircase, feeling his way toward it, driven by a primal instinct. The shadows whispered around him, their soft voices like serpents coiling tighter around his thoughts. "Leave us, you can't escape," they hissed, ooze mixing with the insistent pounding of his heart. With a howl of determination, he stumbled, lunging toward the stairs. Just as he reached the first step, the ground ahead of him shifted underfoot, plummeting suddenly into a yawning abyss. Mike barely caught himself, teetering on the edge of that unseen danger. "Please," the girl's voice echoed in his mind, fueling his desperation. He had to find a way out. He had to for her, for Lily. Blindly, he surged up the stairs, clawing at the wooden railing, half expecting a ghostly hand to grab him, to yank him back down again. With each step, the malevolence behind him grew more insistent, dark whispers promising agony and despair. Bursting through the door at the top, he collided painfully into a narrow hallway. The shrieking air clawed at his throat as he struggled to compose himself. He spun around to look back into the basement. Was it gone? The faintest flicker of movement caught his eye. Figures were shifting in the shadows below, their faces twisted, reaching toward him with gaunt, desperate hands. For an instant, he locked eyes with one of them, the girl. She was too far for him to help, forever ensnared in that hell. His gut twisted painfully. "I'm sorry," he yelled into the void, anger bubbling up, mingling with grief and terror. "I need to go." But the door behind him shuddered, ghostly fingers brushing against it on the other side, clawing like hungry beasts. With a frantic breath, Mike rushed further into the hall, hoping to escape the clutches of that cursed place. Each step felt like a gamble against time. Shadows danced wildly along the walls, like fingers reaching for him, yearning for his warmth. He made it to the exit, gripping the doorknob with sweaty palms. Just as he turned it, a deafening crash rang out behind him. Something had escaped the basement. A rush of wind surged past him, an otherworldly force urging him on. "Mike!" The girl's voice broke through once more, clearer now, urgent and defiant. "You must help us." The door swung open, and sunlight flooded in as he tumbled out onto the lawn, gasping for breath. The sky was clear, but the chill danced along his skin, urging him to look back. What had he left behind? The truth clawed at him, insatiable and raw. Would he unearth the horrors that coiled beneath the basement, or had he already signed his own fate by saving himself? The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. An unsettling calm settled over him, broken only by the distant echoes of sorrowful cries, those who were condemned to linger in the dark. He stepped back, breath hitching, the weight of dread pooling in his gut. What price would he pay to rescue the lost? Was it more than he could bear? As he turned away, retreating from the door, a voice reached him from within the shrouded depths, murmuring his name with a familiarity that made his blood run cold. Mike, come back. What had he stumbled into? And what awaited him if he dared to return? Mike barely felt the heat of the sun as he stumbled across the yard, his breath still quickening with every heartbeat. The sound of laughter from a distant neighbor's backyard felt eerie, a stark contrast to what he just escaped. Those memories lingered, like shadows cast long by the sinking sun. The call of the girl haunted him as he tore his gaze away from the basement door. It ached inside, a gnawing guilt mixed with determination. He chose survival, yet her voice clawed at his mind. Why? Why her? He felt like a coward for running while she remained trapped, just a ghostly plea in a realm of despair. Come back. Even the lingering echo of her voice chilled him deeper, threading sorrow into despair. Mike shook his head, willing himself to shove those thoughts away. He needed a break, some normalcy. Just his phone. Just a call. But as he reached into his pocket, all he found were cold fingers of despair. The device was gone. Panic surged back, a relentless wave crashing over him. He cursed under his breath. In the chaos, he must have lost it somewhere in that nightmare. He thought of neighbors. Could he call for help? He scanned the yards around him, but no one seemed to notice the panic in his eyes. The laughter faded, replaced by oppressive silence that felt too heavy to bear. Against his better judgment, he turned back toward the basement door, heart hammering. He took a step closer, driven not by courage but by a sense of duty, a promise to Lily he might never fulfill. He could feel the pulse of the earth beneath him, almost alive and throbbing with something dark and hungry. The door remained ajar, beckoning. A part of him screamed at him to run, to flee far away. Yet that voice inside whispered insistently, "Help us." He hesitated before pushing the door wider, the hinges creaking like the groans of the damned. Darkness reached out, snaking through the threshold. Every instinct told him to retreat, but he stepped inside, pulled by an invisible thread. The basement was more oppressive than before. The scent of damp, decay, mixed with something metallic filled the air. And then he saw them, the writhing shadows, twisted forms clawing at the ground. Faces blurred by anguish stared up at him, mouths opening in silent screams. It was as if they all knew him, knew what he had done, what he had left behind. Mike, that voice again, softer now. The girl was there, suspended in shadow, her white dress glowing faintly. "Help us." Before he could respond, a low growl reverberated through the dark, and from the dead silence emerged a figure slithering forth, half-formed yet terrifying. Eyes glowed with an insatiable hunger, piercing Mike's soul. "Foolish boy," the creature snarled, its voice like gravel scraping on stone. "You think you can help them? You've already drawn their ire with your cowardice." His heart raced. He was paralyzed, a deer caught in headlights. The shadows around him whispered louder, urging for rescue. But behind them loomed the horror, the embodiment of his fears, waiting to snatch him back into its fold. "Leave or be added to our number." Mike couldn't move, his mouth dry, throat constricted. The air thickened with their desperate pleas, blending chilling harmonies of despair. The basement felt like it was closing in, walls pressing closer, shadows lurking. Everything inside him screamed to escape. But one haunting question echoed louder than all else. How many could he save, or had he already lost his chance? He bolted back toward the door, the figure hissing in rage behind him. He would not perish here, but what about Lily? As he fled, he turned his head one last time, seeing the girl reaching out, her form disappearing as shadows devoured her. Mike, don't forget. What lay ahead? Was there truly no way to rescue her? Or would fate cast him into the abyss alongside the lost souls waiting for salvation? With newfound dread, he burst through the door, heart racing like the ticking clock of an executioner's countdown. But as he turned back to lock the door, something slammed against it from inside, sending tremors through his bones. And then came the dreadful whispers, "You will return." You must what awaited him when he dared to heed that call. Mike stumbled away from the basement door, each footfall echoing through the oppressive silence, his heart thudding like a war drum. Cold sweat dripped down his back, the once familiar yard now a prison of shadows and fear. A low thrum of dread pulsed in his chest, reminded by the whispers still haunting him. He stumbled toward the house, but the familiar comfort he sought felt like a mirage retreating into the dusk. He stepped inside, slamming the door behind him, his breath coming in quick gasps. The darkness enveloped him, thick and suffocating. He flipped the light switch, nothing happened. The electricity had betrayed him, much like his own gut instinct had betrayed the girl he could not save. Panic swirled around him like murky water, threatening to swallow him whole. "Just breathe," he whispered to himself, pressing his palms against his eyes. The memories flooded back, the chill of the basement air, the agonizing cries. Lily's face danced behind his eyelids, her outstretched hand becoming like a stone around his heart. But he couldn't let despair pull him under. He fumbled for the walls, searching for something familiar, something grounding. In the dark, he noticed a shimmer, a reflection. His pulse quickened as he reached for it, heart racing as a single beam of moonlight broke through a cracked window, illuminating an old, tarnished mirror hung crookedly on the wall. The reflection showed him not just his pale, sweating face, but something behind him, movement in the shadows. "Turn around," a voice whispered, sharp and urgent. Mike's breath caught. Was it her? Was it Lily? He squinted into the darkened corners of the room, dread heavy on his shoulders. But all he found was the stillness of his empty home, shadows shifting in the edges of his vision. "Stop it," he shouted, voice trembling. "Show yourself." The darkness responded with an eerie silence, mocking his fear. Then, out of nowhere, a scratching sound echoed from the basement door he had left ajar. The scratching morphed into desperate thumps, sending waves of panic coursing through his veins. The whispers grew louder, an insistent chorus clawing at his sanity. Mike moved toward the door, heart pounding. Each step reverberated in his ears. The air grew colder, thickened, wrapping around him like tendrils. He opened the door slightly, peering into the abyss he had just escaped. The darkness felt alive, hunger swirling within it. Then he heard that voice again, softer and closer this time. "Mike, don't leave me." Fear shot through him like ice, but the urge to save her chased away his instincts. He had to know. He had to face this terror. With one deep breath, he leaned down, straining to see. "Lily," he called into the void, every syllable feeling like lead in his mouth. There was a momentary silence, followed by furious scratching, too close. He recoiled, heart racing. Then, something broke through the darkness. A figure emerged, twisted and writhing, the shape almost human, but grotesque. The shadows contorted around it, forming a hideous visage that made his stomach turn. It lunged toward him, and he slammed the door shut, barely catching his breath before his mind raced in panic. What was that thing? The memories of the basement flooded back, the shadows that called out for help, their desperate faces now a haunting reminder that he could not close that chapter. He couldn't ignore it any longer. The whispers had returned, no longer distant, but filling the air around him. You will return to save her suddenly. The lights flickered and died. The suffocating dark returned, an overlord ready to reclaim its territory. Heart hammering in his chest, Mike felt the weight of the decision looming over him. He could ignore it again and try to live a normal life, or he could confront the terror that awaited him in the void. With a trembling hand at his side, Mike felt a jolt of resolve pulse through him. He had to go back, but would he reach her before it was too late? As the whispers wrapped around him like a noose, terror and determination battled inside him. The girl's fate rested with him, and now he had no choice. He had to return, but what awaited him in that suffocating darkness? Are you ready to face the abyss, Mike? The chilling question hung in the air, a taunt from the surrounding shadows. What would he find waiting for him on the other side of that door? Mike's hand hovered over the door handle, a tremor running through his fingers as he stilled himself to listen. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to retreat, to barricade himself away from the horrors lurking just beyond the door. The scratching had morphed into a low groan, a terrible mimicry of someone in pain. Lily, he breathed, knowing he should move back. Yet, it felt as though the shadows had gripped him with icy fingers. Summoning what little courage remained, he twisted the handle and turned the door slowly. The hinges creaked, protesting as he exposed the ravenous void once more. The shadows swallowed him, pulling him down into their warmth and cruelty. He could taste the stale air, thick with the remnants of something long decayed. The remnants of his own courage began to erode, worn away beneath layers of dread. He stepped cautiously into the basement, a beam from his phone illuminating the predatory darkness in wavering bursts. Each step echoed eerily, amplified like a funeral march. As he ventured deeper, he felt the presence of other beings, specters of regret and despair lingering just out of sight. They were watching, waiting Mike. The voice, hauntingly familiar, echoed off the damp walls. It tugged at his heart. "Lily," he called out, voice trembling with urgency, but the darkness swallowed his words. The response was another low thrum, a distant chorus of whispers that answered him in the lilt of despair. "You left me," the voice whined, the intensity of its sorrow slicing through the air. In frantic search, Mike raised his phone, the feeble glow revealing the staircase behind him, a serpentine route shadowed in regret. He felt eyes on him, a multitude of unshed tears crowding the space. Whatever had been down there with him, fiendish and dark, was inching closer, its breath sickeningly familiar. He shook his head, fighting against the madness trying to engulf him. "You're not real," he shouted into the void, tension spidering up his spine. But the voice persisted, resonating in his ears as if the basement were a living entity, alive with resentment. "You abandoned me. Help me." Mike moved further along the corner, where the shadows gathered thickest. The floor beneath him creaked with each step, resonating with a sinister symphony that underscored his racing heart. He strained his ears, listening for anything above the cacophony of his panic. Then, the distinct sound of movement rippled through the dark, drumming like a heartbeat. A whisper unfurled around him, pulling his attention. "Find me." A sudden jolt sent his heartbeat racing. A flicker of movement caught his eye, something skittering just beyond the edge of the light. He shone his phone toward the noise, revealing a small animal, darting into the shadows. His breath steadied for a moment until a low growl emerged from deeper within, freezing him in place. "Mike, I can't see," Lily's voice implored, almost pleading, but it shimmered with an evil undercurrent. Desperation clawed at his throat, fighting against the instinct to flee. He moved closer to the center of the basement, the cobwebs clutching at his hair as if the darkness wanted to ensnare him. "Lily, where are you?" Panic edged into his tone, a layer of raw edge lurking beneath the surface. There it was again, a snarl, simmering like a distant storm. He could sense the presence behind him. Something was there. He could feel it breathing, a predatory rhythm chilling him down to his bones. His phone's light flickered, then surged forward, illuminating a figure twisted in the recesses of darkness, something unnaturally human. "Come closer," it beckoned, its voice a slithery whispered taunt that sent ice coursing through his veins. Panic gripped him fully now. He turned to run, heart pounding, but then he felt a hand, cold and inviting, clasping around his wrist. He twisted, meeting vacant eyes that gazed past him. No, no, he screamed, yanking his arm away, heart racing toward oblivion. Something inside the darkness shrieked, a cruel cacophony erupting into the basement. The last thing he saw was the door slamming shut behind him, sealing him in, and the whispers crescendoed. They wrapped around him tighter than ever before. Are you willing to pay the price for a soul lost? Mike trembled. The darkness danced against the walls, shadows flickering, but now he was well and truly trapped. What other truths lurked in the black, waiting for him to uncover? Would he still be able to save Lily from the dark? The air grew heavier, almost suffocating, as Mike staggered deeper into the basement's black expanse. The unsettling quiet buzzed with an electric tension. He could feel the shadows breathing, reciprocating his fear with a low rumble that blended with the symphony of his own heartbeat. Lily, he shouted again, throat raw, the desperation lacing each syllable. But the darkness swallowed his voice once more. Instead, the whispered torment clung thicker around him. You left me, it purred, each word an echo of torment. The basement writhed with that abominable grief, twisting around him like a serpent. He spun wildly, shining his phone in every direction, but the flickering light only highlighted the depths of the void lurking just outside its reach. Faint shapes seemed to flutter just beyond his vision, creeping tendrils of despair that curled like fingers reaching from the rubbery dark. Find me, the hushed plea surged through the stale air again, this time with an almost fevered intensity. Mike's mind raced. What was it searching for? The instinctual terror coursed through him, yet the pull of that voice was magnetic, rooting him in place. Lily's cry struck him like a dagger. He pressed forward, unwilling to let the darkness take her. The shadows around him swirled, dampening the light until the beam from his phone became a mere wisp in the void. He walked against the rhythm of the unseen dread, every step feeling heavier than the last. Suddenly, the growl returned, low, resonating from the farthest reaches of the basement. Deep and primal, it knotted in his gut, rolling like thunder inside a storm cloud. He froze, the light from his phone shaking as the growl morphed into a voice disjointed and jagged. Mike, come play. The sinister mockery in that whisper was unmistakable. It cradled his name like a toy, twisting it into something abhorrent. He whipped around, heart pounding, the darkness whooshing closer, a wave of fear blanketing him. He caught a glimpse of a shadow bending unnaturally, a grotesque imitation of a person, cackling just outside the glow of his light. No, he shouted, pushing against the gnawing dread. He had to find her. He couldn't leave her here. I'm coming, Lily. Hold on. But the walls groaned in response, seemingly alive, as they closed in around him. The light flickered more violently now, like the last dying breath of hope. In that instant, a shudder ripped through the basement, a deep, unearthly sigh, thick with sorrow and rage. Help me, the voice came again, closer now, as if the shadows themselves were urging him deeper. He felt the ground shift beneath him, the floorboards groaning under the weight of his panic. Before he could react, something lunged from the dark, a chilling shadow of limbs and teeth that flared in the flicker of his phone's weak light. He ducked, narrowly avoiding its grasp, adrenaline propelling him forward. He stumbled toward a flickering glow, another stairway leading upward, barely visible, like a sanctuary. Please, help. Lily's voice rose to a wail that splintered the air, shaking his resolve. He turned, breath labored, desperately scanning the oppressive darkness. I can't see. Where are you? The growling intensified, alive, a malignant presence tightening around him. But something was different this time. The shadows quivered, as if sensing his resolve. The air was heavier, the whispering growing frenetic, calling not just for Mike, but something darker that waited in anticipation. Then he saw it, a pair of pale, glistened eyes pinning him down, hunger etched onto a ghastly face. This shadow was no longer distant. It was hungry, yearning. Leave, or stay forever, it taunted, things slithering just beneath its skin, writhing eagerly in anticipation. Mike's thoughts screamed at him to run, to escape before everything turned violent. Yet as he turned toward the stairs, he found he couldn't move. The air felt thick, suffocating around his throat. Something sinister was weaving its way into his mind, and he could hear the cries of others in the darkness, trying to speak. "Will you pay the price?" echoed the chilling voice, this time without malice, just a simple invitation. Lily's voice echoed faintly again, closer, more urgent. Desperation surged again as he fought against an unseen force weighing him down. But time was running out. In that moment of despair, with eyes watching from the void, he realized the true horror was not what lurked in the shadows, but what he might uncover if he let them pull him deeper. What if there was no way to save Lily? What price would he pay if he couldn't break free? And then, in the depths of that nightmarish realm, a new scream split the darkness. Not just any scream, a resonance of a truth waiting to be uncovered. "Help me." But who was really crying for help? Mike's breath hitched as the intensity of the darkness wrapped tighter around him. The whispered pleas, cries soaked in desperation, swirled like a haunting melody. With every flicker of his phone's light, he felt their hunger. The shadows were alive, jeering at his plight while drawing closer, their features twisting into indistinct horrors. "Lily," he roared, but his voice cracked, swallowed by the clamor of the abyss. The weight of those shadows pressed against him, and it felt as if vines were coiling around his limbs, rooting him in place. "I'm coming." Mike's heart raced. He could feel its staccato rhythm dancing with the dissonant whispers that filled the cold air. He inched forward, each step a battle against an unseen force dragging him back into the abyss. The other voices shifted in pitch, becoming a disjointed chorus that echoed his own fears. "Help me. We're trapped." Then that dreadful growl reverberated in the damp corners. It morphed into a cacophony of sound that clawed at the edges of his sanity. "Leave, or stay forever." The voice oozed malice, now laced with a seductive garb that made Mike's skin crawl. But just as swiftly, it shifted back to familiar tones. Mike whispered the voice of a child. It bore an eerie resemblance to Lily's. "Help me, please." He lunged toward the last flickering beam, praying for salvation, panic surging as he thought he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. A shadowy figure darted in and out of the dark. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but the terror, swamped in longing to find Lily, rooted him to the spot. He panned his phone again, and there it was, a flash of her silhouette, somewhere in the murk, a fleeting image. "Lily," he called, ignoring the dread gripping him like a vice. The vision recoiled into the inky darkness, teasing him further. "Come, Mike," the specter echoed, every syllable dripping with foreboding. "You'll never escape. Never." "Join us." Mike stumbled backward, heart slamming against his ribcage. A deep sense of loss clung to him, thick as fog, pressing against his lungs. The voices pressed in harder, each cry reverberating, blending with his own. They surged with malevolent purpose, overwhelming his senses. "Help me." The whispers circled, drawing nearer, becoming a whirlpool of anguish that tugged at his very soul. The glowing stairs, his only escape, seemed to stretch endlessly upward. Yet, the more he fought to reach them, the heavier the air became. The shadows surged forward, a wicked tide ready to engulf him in their churning depths. "No!" Mike screamed. He pushed against the encroaching darkness, forcing his feet to move, the glow of the phone's dim light flickering like a dying flame. Not again. The sensation was almost physical. Shadows danced around him, their textures cold and clammy, whispering things he longed to ignore. Willing himself to run, he felt trapped in a relentless cycle of dread, a never-ending nightmare fueled by regret. But he wouldn't let go. Then, the unmistakable sound of laughter shattered the thick atmosphere, a twisted, maniacal sound echoing from nowhere and everywhere all at once. It wrapped around him, a garish embrace, and he fumbled, the phone slipping from his fingers, illuminating the space for a brief, hellish second before falling into darkness. In that moment, the growl returned, but this time it carried something deeper, sinister, like thunder rumbling on the edge of a storm. It hung in the air, thickening with anticipation, as if something terrible was about to unfold. "Join me, Mike." The voice became smoother, seductive. "It'll be fun forever." The shadows seemed to writhe and ripple with excitement, pleading eagerly for his surrender. The reality of his situation slammed into him. He was on the brink of a revelation that could tear him apart. The very essence of fear coiled tighter around him, and he grabbed the edge of the stairway as panic ignited in his throat. The door behind him creaked ominously, not just a door but a threshold, a place of entrance and exit. Whatever lay beyond was a terrifying question unfolding before him. Had he followed his heart too far down this rabbit hole? "Lily," he shouted, choking back tears, his voice barely slicing through the tension in the air. If she was in there, he had to go deeper. Maybe it was the only way to save her. But as he stood at the edge of that invisible boundary, he felt the shadows seep closer, pulling him into their fold, pulling whispers together until they formed one united cry. "What will you sacrifice?" The basement trembled, the walls shivered, and Mike felt the invitation hanging in the ethereal air. There, between the fight for survival and the shadowy truth waiting for him, the terrifying question lingered. Who would he lose today? As the darkness thickened, he stood frozen at the brink, caught between two worlds, knowing he had to make a choice. Would he plunge deeper, or would he try to escape a nightmare that lived inside him? The chilling laugh returned, flooding his senses, the shadows reaching forward with insatiable anticipation. The basement resonated with a chilling justice, and Mike braced himself. There was no turning back now. What if staying meant losing everything? Mike stood at the edge of the abyss, the decision pressing on him heavier than the darkness itself. Each heartbeat echoed in his ears as the shadows wriggled and whispered around him, an unnerving symphony of voices reaching for his soul. "What will you sacrifice?" They crooned, seductive and cruel. His heart ached for Lily, for the girl he had met, and the faces of the trapped souls clawing for freedom, begging for help. They all flashed through his mind, gleaming eyes in the dark, twisted contortions of fear demanding release. But could he truly save them? Or would he join them in an eternal limbo of suffering? As darkness coiled around him, ready to drag him into its depths, he pushed through the despair. "I'm not afraid of you." The words spilled from him, filled with raw desperation, drowning out the insistent whispers. "I'm here to save her." He turned his gaze back into the black void. "Lily." His voice rang out, desperate, echoing in the stifling atmosphere. If he could just reach her, harness that love, maybe he could cut through the dark. A split-second hesitation, and then a low, guttural growl beneath the floor sent electricity charging through his body. The shadows shivered, and something trembled in the air, a promise of chaos lurking just beyond the fringes. He sprinted toward the source of Lily's whispered cries, ignoring the gnawing dread biting at his heels. Then, a memory surged through him, those photographs in the basement, the wretched smiles gripped by fear. They had families, dreams, lives smothered under the weight of this haunting. His heart twisted painfully. He had to uncover the truth, for them and for Lily. He plunged into the depths of the basement, arms stretching out, propelled by love and fear. The shadowy figures loomed thicker, swirling in a tempest of despair, reaching, stretching their skeletal hands toward him. "Save us!" they wailed, a surge of urgency filling his veins. "Where are you?" he shouted against the cacophony. The wails morphed into a single, horrific scream echoing through the walls, the pain of countless souls sounding like thunder through the air. "I'm here. I'm coming." And there it was, a flicker of white, her figure shimmering in the darkness ahead. "Lily." His voice cracked as he lunged, every ounce of dread, every bead of sweat fueling him. "Please come back." A chorus wailed, representing everything that he was trying to escape. But it wasn't just Lily. There were countless souls, each lost, screaming for salvation. The shadows tightened, threatening to consume him. But as he reached her, the icy tendrils of darkness wrapped around his hand. Lily's terrified eyes stared back at him, a mixture of longing and fear. "You shouldn't have come back," she whispered, reaching out. "I couldn't just leave you," he gasped, tearing himself free of the shadow's grip. Grabbing her hand felt electric, a pulse of warmth cutting through the chill. "Let us get out of here." The shadows hissed, angry and unforgiving. "You will pay the price," they shrieked. But Mike wouldn't falter, not this time. Not for her. He pulled her toward the staircase, the whirling dark clawing at them. But they surged forward together, the light beckoning them. Every step felt like a battle against the unyielding force that wanted to drag them back. With each frantic, desperate stride, they drew closer to freedom. But as they reached the door, the shadows screamed, a deafening howling rising in fury. You can't escape what you awakened. Mike flung the door open, sunlight flooding the space, blinding him momentarily as they tumbled into the light. The feeling of the warm sun on his skin was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the cold grip of the basement. They landed on the grass outside, gasping for air, hearts racing together. But the air felt heavy, laden with an unspeakable dread. The whispers began to fade but hung around them like invisible chains tethering them to the past. Did we escape? Lily asked, blinking against the brightness, vulnerability sitting heavy on her features. Yes, he exclaimed, but deep inside, he felt the weight of the shadows lingering just out of reach. But we can't let them go. We have to help them. Lily looked at him, wide-eyed. What do you mean? We can't be free until they are, he said, determination igniting within him. We have to uncover the truth of this place. We have to save them all. And as that determination burned bright, Mike realized the journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. They had souls to save, dark secrets to uncover. For the first time, the terror twisted into purpose, a sense of direction emerging from the chaos. Together, they turned back toward the looming structure of the community center, a dark, watchful presence now. Let us end this, he said, squeezing Lily's hand. They faced the door as it creaked ominously, shadows entwining, ready for the next chapter. The remaining whispers, once so oppressive, now faded into the background, echoing hope instead of despair. They would confront the darkness again, challenge it with their light. Whatever awaited them inside wouldn't stand a chance against the bond they forged through love and sacrifice. As they took their first steps to uncover the truth, Mike felt an undeniable certainty. Together, they would defeat the darkness that threatened to consume them. His heart finally felt light, not because fear had vanished, but because hope had ignited a flame they both would carry into the shadows. And as they crossed the threshold, ready to face whatever came next, they knew one truth weighed over all others. They were not alone. You need to subscribe now. Don't let the end of this wild journey be the end of your connection. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the stories alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Mike and Lily's fate. And don't wait even one more second. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.